Hello, fifth graders, and welcome to your language arts lesson for today. For today, you will need the usual. You'll need your poetry book, you'll need a dictionary of some sort, and you'll need paper, pencil if you've been writing down questions to get ready to enter them into the form. Okay, so we're going to get into our answers from our sympathy work on Tuesday. So I kind of planted some seeds to be thinking about as we left, and also we set up a lot of the answers, but we're going to talk through some of them together right now. So we're going to skip through 1 through 5. I've been giving comments in. Most of you guys are doing a great job with your titles and with your rhyme schemes, but some of you have been giving comments to ask you to correct those. Very much things that are going to show up on tests, okay? Okay, so what does the speaker feel about the quality of the cage bird's life? A lot of great answers here, right? But again, we're talking about this being a life of suffering. So the speaker feels that the cage bird's life is hard, challenging, is full of pain, is full of suffering, is not the life that the bird would like. All of these are great answers. And then I gave lots of great comments. You guys are doing a really great job. Actually, our objective today is about supporting with quotes. And again, most of you guys are doing a really excellent job supporting your answers with quotes from the text. So there were a lot of great options for quotes that would support this idea that the cage bird's life is difficult or challenging. What kind of life does the cage bird wish it had? I really pointed you to stanza 1, and the life that it wishes it had would be a free life. The cage bird wishes it had a free life, a life of freedom, a life in the wild, a life outside of the cage, okay? And again, question 9, a lot of great quotes coming from stanza 1 here, okay? And we can see that the cage bird is in this cage, and it can see the life it wishes it had. It can see the sun shining brightly. It can feel the wind. It can smell the flowers that are blooming. It can hear the river flowing, right? It wants all of these things. And actually, we see an example of simile in this first stanza. The river flows like a stream of glass. Okay, so there's an example of a simile in the first stanza. I'm going to add a question about that. Not for this homework, but for future students. So again, any of those quotes would be great to show what it wishes its life were like. According to the poem, why does the cage bird sing? Again, not a carol of joy or glee. But we could say the cage bird sings because it is pleading, because it is praying for a better life. Okay? Great answers to that. What quote supports your answer? One quote that supports my answer would be either of those, but a prayer that he sends from his heart's deep core, but a plea that upward to heaven he flings. Okay? Okay, and so then when we're looking at metaphor, which of these is an example of metaphor? The teen's bedroom was a hazardous waste site, right? Our first one is literally true. The dog being a four-legged hound is literally true. The second one, the flowers swayed like dancers, is definitely comparing two things, but it's using like, which makes it what? Yeah, that makes it a simile. So this is our metaphor. The teen's bedroom was a hazardous waste site. Again, it's comparing the bedroom to a hazardous waste site, which is not literally true, which actually kind of sets up our answer. It is an example of a metaphor because it compares the bedroom to a hazardous waste site, which is not literally true. And we conclude what about this bedroom? That it's going to be really dirty, right? Almost like gross dirty, right? That it's almost like a hazard, okay? Okay. And I left you with this question, fifth graders, about why, right? If the objective was the purpose of a metaphor, and we talked about how this poem is a metaphor, right? It's a metaphor. It's describing the birds, or it's describing slavery, we talked about, to describe the bird's life. So why? Why use a metaphor? And I kind of talked a lot about the risk and the harm. And I think in this case, one reason, and maybe you were thinking of some other things, and if so, please feel free to message me. But I think one thing is absolutely the risk, right? That this becomes sort of a way to talk about slavery without there being the risk for talking about it. Because at this time, absolutely, there were still people that would have been infuriated about the end of slavery and fighting for it to continue. America has dealt with issues stemming from this for a long time. And so if we're thinking about how close to it would be, this sort of serves as a protection. And so sometimes metaphor can be used to be able to talk about things without the risk or the harm um, of being found out about what you're talking about. It's a way to communicate in code without the risk, right? Kind of what you're thinking about. So I'd be curious though. There are other, I mean, metaphor is used in a lot of ways and for a lot of reasons. So I think I'd be curious to hear other thoughts you might have. Okay. Okay. So fifth graders, today we're reading a poem, If, by Rudyard Kipling. He, you might know, most famously, I think, wrote The Jungle Book, the stories of The Jungle Book. So maybe you know that. He also wrote Just So stories, which if you were here in second grade, I believe second grade reads some of those Just So stories, right? How the leopard got its spots or how the camel got its hump, things like that. So he also wrote those. But this is one of his poems that I think is widely known. A lot of people know this poem. I think if you ask people, like, what's your favorite poem? I think a lot of people might pick. I shouldn't say a lot. I think a lot of people would pick Langston Hughes as a favorite poet too. I think Maya Angelou, these are all great. We're reading a lot of great poems. So our objective is going to be supporting our answers with quotes. And really, this whole poem is kind of describing the things that, kinds of challenges that you might experience in life. And so we're going to talk about, in your homework, you're going to really write about some of these challenges, and then you're going to support that answer with quotes. So I'm going to flip you around to look at our questions. Then we're going to read. Then we're going to do the same thing we've been doing, right? So our first 5 questions should be familiar. Poem title, poem author, you're going to look up 2 words and identify if there's a rhyme scheme. 6 through 11 are all going to be very similar. So in this poem, Kipling describes many challenges that humans experience in life. And so all of these are going to be about those challenges. So what is one challenge that Kipling is describing? So we'd say Kipling is describing the challenge of blank, or one challenge that Kipling is describing is. That would be better. And then you're going to support that with a quote. So a quote that supports my answer is blank. 8, 9, 10, 11, we're going to repeat the same thing. Another challenge that Kipling is describing is blank. A quote that supports my answer is blank. Another challenge that Kipling is describing is blank, and another quote that supports my answer is blank. So those questions are all very similar. 12, based on the poem, what does Kipling seem to find important or valuable? So based on the poem, Kipling seems to find blank important or valuable. So be thinking about what it is that he's telling us to care about. What is it that he thinks is important? And again, you'll pick a quote to support that answer. And question 14 is asking you to look into dictionary entries. So what part of speech is this entry word? So let's go ahead. I might only read it once and encourage you all to try and read it a few times on your own, but it is a little bit of a longer poem. So, If by Rudyard Kipling. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too, if you can wait, but not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good, nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those 2 impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken and stoop and build them up with worn out tools, if you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss, if you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, Yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and which is more? You'll be a man, my son. So we hear some of the language, right? It's masculine, but I think we can fit it to whomever, right? Man could be human, right? Or my son, my child, right? So thinking about that as we reflect. Okay, so I'm going to encourage you to pause, work on those first 5. Remember, with 5, if there is a rhyme scheme, the number of letters in your rhyme scheme should match the number of lines in each stanza. Once you've done 1 through 5, come on back and we're going to continue together. Okay, so I'm actually going to have you copy 6 and 7 with me. I want to model how to do 6 and 7, and so or 6 through 11, I guess I should say. So I'm going to actually model for you how to do this, and you can actually copy these first 2. So, and then I'm going to have you do the rest on your own. So, what is one challenge that Kipling is describing? So, one challenge that Kipling is describing is, so we'd say blank. That's how you're going to redo all of these. So each of these kind of 2 to 4 line chunks are actually, they go together as these descriptions. And if we were in person, I would actually be putting you in groups and you guys would be working on presentations and we'd essentially present on the whole poem all together, talking about each of these little bits about it. So I'm going to start us off, right? We're going to start right at the top of the poem. So one challenge that Kipling is describing is these first 2 lines. He says, if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. So what is that talking about, to keep your head? It's kind of like to keep your cool, to keep your calm. And if people are losing their heads, it means that they're usually not staying calm. They're angry or they're stressed, okay? So what is one challenge that Kipling is describing? We'd say one challenge that Kipling is describing is trying to stay calm, trying to stay level-headed when others are not staying calm and are blaming you for their anger, their frustration, okay? So again, this is one that you guys can kind of copy. I'm trying to model it for you. So one challenge that Kipling is describing is trying to stay calm when others are not staying calm and are blaming you for their anger. This is going to look pretty close. One quote that supports my answer is, if you can keep your head when all about you, and actually there's a little trick. When you're quoting a poem, if it's between multiple lines, you actually put a slash there. You don't have to do that, but that's how we would format it. Are losing theirs and blaming it on you. Done, okay? So you're going to redo, so again, pause or rewind, you can copy these down. So you're going to redo this 2 more times, okay? 8, 9, 10, 11, same thing. The poem is full of these sort of little parts. So you're going to chunk it out and talk about these challenges that he's describing and then support it with a quote. You'll see ours were pretty close here, and maybe you can try to say them a little bit more variety of words. But again, we're linking what he's describing to quotes. So I would pause and again pick ones that seem clear to you, that you feel confident about. Some of these are a little bit trickier, and we'll talk about it when we come back tomorrow, but pick ones that you feel confident about, okay? So then 12 and 13, based on the poem, that's not what I wanted to do. Based on the poem, Kipling seems to find blank important or valuable. And one quote that supports my answer is blank. And then selecting this multiple choice. Okay, so 5th graders. Again, you're probably pretty close to done, right? If you've been pausing and working as we go. A little bit more to do on your own, but we're kind of really reflecting on, well, supporting, making sure that as we're answering these questions, we're supporting it with quotes from the text. And when we revisit tomorrow, we're going to go through, what does this really mean, right? What are each of these poems, what are each section of the poem, what's it about? What is it getting at, right? What is it that he's challenging people to do? What sort of struggles are we supposed to be working through? And ultimately, like, what is the point? What is this poem really about? Okay, Nova scholars that you are, maybe you have some thoughts, Nova scholars, about what he's encouraging humans to do. So hopefully you have a pretty strong idea of what this is going to look like for your work. And when we come back tomorrow, we're going to go into a little bit more in-depth discussion of each part of this. So good luck.